Thank you. Boys and girls, welcome to our Black History Celebration for 2020. Give yourself a round of applause for being here. We have an exciting morning for you. I'm going to introduce the presider for this program today. It is none other than, and give her a loud round of applause, Miss Martin!
Good morning, and welcome to our 7th grade Black History Celebration. We are so happy that you are here with us today. Our theme this year is Look How Far We've Come. And now, let's hear how Black History Month became a celebration. Please welcome Jeremy Daniels as he presents how it began. Jeremy Daniels.
Hi, good morning. I'm going to be presenting to you about Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history. Black History Month is observed each February and celebrates the achievements of African Americans. In February of 1926, a man by the name of Dr. Carter G. Woodson proposed the establishment of Negro History Week to honor the history and contributions of African Americans to American life. Dr. Woodson, known as the father of Black history, chose the second week of February because it commemorates the birthdays of two men who greatly affected the African American community, Abraham Lincoln, February 12th, and Frederick Douglass, February 14th. Like the United States of America has a national anthem, African Americans have a Black national anthem as well. Our culture also has special colors that is proudly shown on our flag. Red for our blood and struggle, Black for our people of color, green for the land, the symbol of hope, and a liberated future which Black heroes spoke. Black history, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for reminding us how celebrating Black history began. This fits right in with our theme, Look How Far African Americans Have Come. Let's give Jeremy another nice round of applause for that piece of Black history. Now, let's continue the path of looking at how far we've come with our Black Achievement presentation. Coats, please be reminded that you need to be taking notes for each presenter because following the presenter will be trivia. The questions from the trivia will come from what the presenters have said. Thumbs up if you have a pencil and your interactive notebook. And now, you are prepared to take notes. Okay, now, our first Black Achievement presenter is Jocelyn Garcia. Let's applaud her as she comes forward.
Good morning. I will be reading about Nat Turner leads slave rebellion. On February 12, 1831, there was a solar eclipse. A slave named Nat Turner saw it as a sign. He felt it was time for the slaves in Virginia to rebel against their masters. On August 21, he and a few companies went from house to house freeing slaves. They killed about 60 white people before militia stopped them. In the aftermath, as many as 200 Black people were killed. Black people were attacked in the southern states too. Turner was captured at the end of October. He was tried and hanged in November. Because Turner had been literate, it became illegal to teach Blacks to read. As a result of this ban on literacy, education for Blacks became an important issue after the Civil War. Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have Ashante McHardy with her presentation.
Good morning. Today I will be reading about Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley was born in 1753 in West Africa and was brought to Massachusetts on a slave ship in 1761. At about age 7, Wheatley was sold as a slave to a Boston family. They treated her well and educated her. She studied the Bible and admired several English poets. She became famous in 1770 with a poem on the death of evangelical preacher George Whitefield. She was the first African American poet and the first African American woman to publish a book. Her poems are filled with hope that all people can be saved by Christian teachings. Only rarely did she write about the sufferings of African slaves, as in this line: "Some view our sable race with scornful eye." She was granted freedom in 1778 and married, but then died in poverty on December 5th, 1784. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashante, for your wonderful presentation on Phyllis Wheatley. Now, we will have Leonia Pierre Charles to come up. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning. Today I'll be reading about John Mercy Langston. John Mercy Langston was born December 14, 1829 in Virginia. His mother was an emancipated slave and his father was a wealthy white planter. At the age of 14, he enrolled at Oberlin College in Ohio. He went on to earn a master's degree and became the first black lawyer in Ohio. He opened a respected law practice and was elected to positions in town government. Mr. Langston organized anti-slave societies and helped slaves equal rights lead and campaigned for black voting rights. After the Civil War, he traveled throughout the South to support newly fed slaves in 1888. He ran for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives and became the first African American from Virginia elected to Congress. But sadly, Mr. Langston died on November 15, 1897. Thank you, Combs.
Wonderful presentation, Leonia. Boys and girls, we are ready for some trivia. Coming to do the trivia is none other than myself, Miss Martin. She will be assisted by Ms. Bell and Ms. Lawson. Let's go ahead and have a little question on Phyllis Wheatley. What book did she study that inspired her poem? Let's see. The young man back there with the gray jacket on. The Bible is correct. Can we give him a round of applause? Another question on Phyllis Wheatley. Wheatley was the first African American at what two things? Again, Wheatley was the first African American at what two things? Let's see. Young man with the yellow shirt. Matthew. No, unfortunately, that is incorrect. We have another volunteer. Let's move on. Let's try up here. Yes, Ethan.
He was a poet and a writer.
That is correct. She published her first book. Let's move on to John Langston. What age was Langston when he enrolled in Oberlin College in Ohio? Let's see. Right over here. White jacket, yes. 14 is correct, yes. This young lady right here with the white jacket. In 1864, Langston became the first president of what league? Let's see. Yes, sir.
The first president of Equal Rights.
It was for equal rights. Yes, sir. And what about for Nat Turner? What did Turner and a few companions do on August 21st? That Michael. She did free slaves. Yes, that is correct. Nat Turner took this to be signed that it was time for slaves in Virginia to rebel against masters? East side? It was the solar eclipse. Let's give a round of applause. Yes. That was an awesome job, everyone. It goes to show you that taking notes can pay off in a very nice way. Next will be the introduction of our speaker by none other than our middle school dean, Mr. Barnes.
Let's go ahead and correct that. My name is Andre Barnes. I'm the middle school art teacher here. And, well, eventually I will be the middle school art teacher, eventually. But right now I'm the elementary art teacher. We hope to get an art club going in some form or fashion. But our dean had to take care of a situation, so I'm here to do the introduction. Clerk Joseph E. Smith is a native of Fort Pierce and is the youngest of 4 children born to Carolyn Mackey Smith and the late James H. Smith, Jr. of Fort Pierce. Clerk Smith is a brother of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Incorporated, and has 2 sons with his wife, Heather Smith. Clerk Smith graduated from Lincoln Park Academy, received his Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science and Organizational Communication, as well as a Master's of Arts in Political Management, and is a Florida Supreme Court certified clerk. Joseph E. Smith was elected clerk in November 2008 and took office in January 2009. He previously served as a county commissioner for 4 years. Since his first election, Clerk Smith has drastically improved efficiencies and office performance with the use of technology. Under his tenure, the office has reduced costs, which, while improving customer service and implementing new forms of revenue for county government. The office has also repeatedly earned the Best Place to Work award in St. Lucie County. Clerk Joseph E. Smith is an advocate for the people of St. Lucie County. He is now serving his 3rd fourth-year term. He serves nearly 300,000 people as the county's clerk, chief financial officer, treasurer and auditor, recorder, and clerk of the Board of County Commissioners. Clerk Smith also oversees more than 150 deputy clerk professionals in 4 locations. If you could please stand and receive our guest speaker, Joseph E. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you very, very, very much. Well, good morning. That was nice. I kind of was a ripple. So let's try it one more time. I'll do 3, 2, 1, and we do it again. Good morning. 3, 2, 1. Good morning. There we go. Thank you so much. It is great to be with you this morning. I have always said I come from a family of educators. My mother is an educator, retired. She spent 34 years here in St. Lucie County. I have a sister who's an educator. One of my brothers is an educator as well, and one's a corrections officer. So you definitely want to hang out with the educators, not the corrections officer. That was a joke. Not a good one. You're right. It wasn't a good joke. Okay. But what I'll say is that if I weren't in politics, I absolutely would be in education. And I can't express enough to Mr. Davis and Ms. Bell and the other wonderful team members here at Samuel Gaines Academy how much I appreciate you thinking of me today to celebrate Black History Month with you. I'm really honored. Thank you very much for that. So we don't have a lot of time, but I figured in the time that we do have, why don't we talk about what Black History Month means to me and why it's important to you. The young man, Mr. Daniels, kind of talked about how it began, and great job, by the way. And I think what we can, not just how it began, but maybe we can talk about the, why. Why is this study important? Why do we want to take a look at Black History Month? Why do we want to see and know what African Americans have done throughout history, particularly right here within the borders of our country? Well, I'd say to you, it's because you can't, there's a quote out there that says, you're definitely you don't have an opportunity to learn from history. And if you don't understand history, you're going to be doomed to repeat it. And I think that we always should be careful and we should always be vigilant about the things that have happened to people of all races in this country, particularly those of African Americans and blacks. It's not very far away removed from where blacks could not have the right to vote. We're very not far away and removed from the situation where in this classroom right now, as you all are seated by different color and you are a wonderful melting pot of boys and girls and young men and young women, there was a time where if you were darker than a certain person, you could not be in this school. That literally has happened in the lifetime, if not your parents, of your grandparents. My mother is 88 years old, and she lived in a world where blacks were thought to be less than whites. And my grandparents immigrated to this country from the Bahamas. They immigrated to St. Lucie County in 1914. So my family's been in this community for more than 100 years. But think of when my grandmother got here in 1914. She was a washerwoman up in St. Lucie Village. A lot of you may not know where that is, but it's like kind of north Fort Pierce on the drive a little bit. But she washed other people's clothing. That was the only job that she could get in this community because blacks didn't have the same worth, or blacks weren't as smart as, or blacks couldn't do the work that white people could do. My grandfather, who came here, cut pineapples, because this was a really big booming pineapple area around Jensen Beach during that time period as well. But he couldn't go into a bank and get a loan the way your parents or your grandparents could today. He didn't have the ability to go out and just go wherever he wanted to go because there were certain parts of this community that you were not allowed to go there. You could not go there if you were black. When we had a governor in this who came from Fort Pierce who died, I think it was either a heart attack or a stroke, Mr. McCarty, Governor McCarty, and they had his funeral at a church in downtown Fort Pierce. Blacks were not allowed to go to the funeral. And we're talking like, you guys are thinking like, oh, that was like in the 1800s. No, we're talking in the 20th century. And we're only 20 years away from the 20th century, so not that long ago. That is a type of struggle that blacks faced right here in our own community. By the way, I love this community because I can tell you the thing that makes that work for me is that what my grandparents went through, they did what they did so I did not have to. What my mother went through, she did what she did. She taught in an all-black school, Francis K. Sweet Middle School. It's right here on 13th Street in Fort Pierce right now, but she was one of those first teachers who was there because that was a school for black kids. And that's where she taught because that's where she could teach. And that's the world that we used to live in, but now think about my life, I'd like to think is some sort of way to say that you kind of can turn it around, or where you talk about the justice and moving forward and how the world can get better. That I grew up not knowing segregation. My older brothers went to Westwood High, and they were in the late 70s, early 80s, when segregation in our community was just starting to finally, people were getting used to integration. How many of you have heard of Central High School? Okay, great. Do you all know, and I'm gonna ask for show of hands, do you all know why Central High School was built? Does anyone know? Well, please, yes. For kids, yes. But the other reason why, no, good answer. But yes, sir, good answer.
And so make coloreds and non-coloreds together?
Yes, to make blacks and whites come together. And so it was the first high school. The thing about it, late 60s, early 70s, 1970, 1971, that was the first time in St. Lucie County history that black kids and white kids were in the same exact school at the same exact time. And I'm going to tell you a little, I wasn't around during that time. I wasn't born until 77, but it's important in our community's history because they also there were two football teams. There was a Lincoln Park football team, which was the black school, and there was a Dan McCarty football team, which was the white school, and they came together at Fort Pierce Central High. And they worked together, and they went off in that very first year or two, and they won a state championship for football, which tells you what's the lesson of that, right? It's that who cares about the color? Respect your own individuality, respect your own history. But if you work together and you take the best of what you have and you add to the best of what someone else has, you can come together and you can literally change the world. And it was a moment of pride for all the people of St. Lucie County, regardless of your color, because that school, those kids were the community's kids. And the black kids and the white kids, they worked together, they became team members, and they did amazing things with that. So I'm so grateful that in my life, I got a chance to go to Lincoln Park. It was always integrated. I've always had an integrated relationship in the world and in the community, and it changes your worldview because I think some of you have heard before, like, none of us is as smart as all of us. If you just are pigeonholed to your ideas or your beliefs or what your assumptions are, and you never find out about the person across the street, you never find out about the person down the road, you never found out about that person around the world, then your view is limited and your education and your knowledge is also limited. So when Mr. Davis is a principal and all the other teachers here are teaching you what is possible, the reason they're giving you this knowledge is because they want you to see that what you know is great, but the potential for what you can learn from others and from other cultures and from other communities is going to make you so much better in the way that you think about things, in the way that you relate to things, in the way that you understand things. How many of you plan on going to college? Okay, or a trade or military or whatever. Let me tell you that the reason that's so important is that I hire people all the time at my office. And I like to hire people who have gone to college or who have a trade or a skill. And let me tell you why. College is a great place to go. You're gonna love it. I promise you, you're gonna have a great time. Go to class, that's the important part. But the other part of college is that you make connections with people who you never would have known otherwise. So I have a group of 4 friends, and we're all best friends, and we are all in different parts of the country right now, but we all came from different backgrounds, different experiences, and we all learned from each other. And that wasn't just in the classroom learning, that was learning how to make tamales, or how to understand another language, or how to understand the experience that someone else had or what their grandmothers went through when they immigrated to the country. Or if they're Native Americans, when they lived here in this country and what their parents and grandparents and generations have seen change this culture and change this nation. So what you should do, and I'm so glad to look out in this crowd and see that everyone's sitting with everyone else, because that's the way we get deeper knowledge and we understand what Dr. King's dream was when he said he wants little black boys and little white girls to work together and sit at the common table of brotherhood. Well, that is what schools do, and that is what education does. It gives you a knowledge, it gives you a base to change your life and to change the history and the course of your life for the better. In my own personal life, I am a person who I am black, my wife is white, our children are multiracial. And 50, 60 years ago, that was illegal in this country. You could not do that. And so I take it really seriously when I think of the fact of knowing that there were people generations before me who could not fall in love with someone because it was illegal for them to fall in love with that person. And so when we think about what Black History Month is, and we think about the fight of African Americans in this country is the fight of all Americans in this country. And we always must be mindful that while we take a moment and while we have a month of a year to celebrate the wonderful advancements that Blacks have given to this country and to the world, that we can never forget that what makes this country so amazing is that we all can come together, that we all can worship the way we want to, that we all can look out for each other as neighbors and as friends, and that we can all live the American dream. When we singing, lift every voice and sing, it's a Black national anthem, it is true. But imagine this was done with kids. There were kids, young kids who sang this song for the very first time in Thanksgiving for President Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation. And it was written in Florida, by the way. That's James Weldon Johnson and his brother made the song, composed it. But what's so cool about that? Imagine those kids who, for the 50 years removed from slavery, are singing about what they've come through over land that with tears have been watered, over the struggle, over the slaughter. The fact that you think of young kids today singing this song and saying like, oh my gosh, like what did they go through? What was their experience that we now have the experiences that we have? And I think you'll agree with me that, 7th grade is hard, no doubt about it. But it's nowhere near as difficult as what kids had to do during slavery and in those first years after slavery, where our country had to heal from the Civil War. Our country had to figure out the best way to come together and actually restore ourselves to become that more perfect union that we all talk about. The Black experience in this country is one of struggle, but it's also one of achievement. And so if there are people, some people do want to always spend our time saying like, oh, well, it was so hard for African Americans, and it was. But I choose to spend my time on saying thanks to those who fought that struggle so that we now have the opportunity to sit with people of all races, people of all stripes, people of all religions, people of all personalities, and say, how do we now that we're sitting at the table, how do we also move together so that our next generation, that my boys who are 7 and 5, that when it's their turn, when they are 43 years old, what will we have left for them? And what will the fight be that you all will be facing? Because the fight continues, the struggle continues. We are always moving forward. If it's not African Americans, it's another group of people who have been disenfranchised, who have been left out, who have been castigated. And so I think what Black History Month does, it reminds us all that it's not just Black History Month. We are grateful for Black History Month, but we also need to go and look and find ways to help other people the way that we helped ourselves and the way that friends and allies helped us. So I am so grateful that, before I finish, the last thing I was going to say. When I think about my grandparents, I get really emotional. My dad passed away about almost 2 years ago, and couldn't love any guy more in the world than him. And he was an immigrant, and he came from the Bahamas in the 1950s. And he wanted to build a better life for his kids. And the best thing that he did, and my mom as well, is they made sure that each of us had an education. My dad didn't finish beyond, in the Bahamas, didn't finish beyond 8th grade. That was the farthest he went because, he was the 3rd oldest kid, and back then they had farms, and when you got to a certain age, you went on the farm and you helped to raise things on the farm, and you helped to plant things because you had to take care of your siblings. But he made sure, and my mom as well, made sure that each of us had a college education. And now the other wonderful, great key about moving forward as a people is to make sure that you understand the value of that education. He didn't have it, but he made sure that he gave it to us. And so now in my own family, I have a brother who is a corrections officer and who's amazing at what he does and helps to keep us safe. I have 2 siblings who are teachers. One's a vice principal somewhere, and they work all the time to make sure that kids with needs and special needs and regular, good old-fashioned, kids of all different types and abilities have what they need to succeed in this country. And we all are in different places with our education. And I will tell you, don't stop. I'm working on my PhD right now because the fact is that you can't ever think that when you've hit a point, there's no such thing as enough. There's no such thing as saying like, oh, well, I have my bachelor's degree and I've learned everything I need to learn. Or, oh, I'm a plumber now and I'm good and now I don't need to learn anything else. If you're going to be a plumber, become a master plumber. If you're going to be a doctor, be board certified. If you're going to become a teacher, get all the certifications you can and become the master teacher who leads the team and who then becomes a principal or assistant principal, or the master teacher that you fly all around the country so you can teach other kids the best ways to learn. What you have in front of you and the opportunity, I remember being at Samuel Gaines when it first opened, and I used to work for the school district before I became a county commissioner. And I remember walking to one of the first classes, and I said then, and I was a lot younger then, you're gonna leave 8th grade knowing more than I knew when I finished high school. And I think that's true, because the technology that you have is not technology we had. The opportunities to open your phone or open your book and figure out what's going on the other side of the world are not opportunities that I had. And so you have the potential to do whatever it is in your mind you want to do, you can do it. No one is going to stop you, and in fact, all the people surrounding you right now are going to do everything that we can to support you. So I thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to be part of your Black History Month. I think my grandparents would be pretty amazed and proud that their grandson within 2 generations, so they had a daughter and then their daughter had a son, that they've gone from being the ones who would sit in the back of the church, being the ones who couldn't get credit, being the ones who couldn't have an open door to them, to having their grandkid be the person who's the chief financial officer for our county, who manages like $200-some million every day on behalf of the taxpayers of this community. So don't think that when you think that, oh my gosh, we've gone through so much, we've had such a hard time. Yeah, we have. But now it's up to each and every one of you to take that hard time that you have had, are having, and to harness it to go and do something fantastic and amazing. So with that, I thank you all so much. I think you had some questions for me, and I'll be happy to answer them. So I'll be happy to take those questions now. Thank you. Okay. I don't usually stand in one place, but now I'll move around a little bit. Thank you very much. And your name? Chris? Okay, good to meet you, Chris. So Chris was asking what were some of the challenges that I faced when I first ran for office. One challenge was that I was really young. And this doesn't sound young to you, but to the adults in the room, it sounds really young. So I was 30 when I was running for county, well, I was 26, 27 when I was running for county commissioner, and I was 30 when I was running for clerk. And so in a community that's not used to people looking like me, A, running for office, or B, being that young and having those skills to do the job, it was very difficult to break through and say, I promise you, if you give me this job, I will work every day for you and I will do my very best job. I know I look young. I didn't have like gray hair back then. I didn't have kids. So the gray hair came from the kids, just so you know. But so I was really young looking, and they were like, well, you're just out of college. How can you manage this money? How can you do these things? And that was a big challenge. But guess what? You all face that challenge right now. There are people in this community who think like, oh, well, they're just kids. Oh, well, they don't know anything. They can't vote. But I will tell you that you will be able to vote soon. And when you can, you should. Because your voice is as equal to mine the day you turn 18. Because you get to make the same decisions about the same issues that I get to make. And that was the whole point. Most people think of, you don't run for office until you're in your 50s. You've had your kids, they've been raised, they're off doing whatever, and now I'm gonna submit my life to public service. Well, I decided early on, I was a 5th grader at Fairlawn when I first ran for student council, and I lost. And I wanted to be president of the United States when I was 10. I was going to be the first black president, by the way, and then, Obama. But I'm trying to get over it. I'm talking to my therapist, it's all good. But the point is that those are the challenges that you might face. But take those challenges, harness them. I just put it fire in the belly. It just says, oh, you don't think I can do it? Watch me. And that's how you kind of push right through it. So that's what I did. That was a challenge. Next question, please. Yes, sir.
Were you the first African American in St. Lucie County to become the clerk of the county court? And if so, how do you feel about making that kind of history?
And your name? Evan, good to meet you. So the question was, am I the first African American clerk in the county's history? I am. And oddly enough, it's not just that. I'm the second. There was a clerk who was elected some years ago up in Gaston County, but I'm the second African American clerk in the history of the state of Florida. So it's actually, and in the time that I've served 12 years, we've gone from 1 to 2 to I think we're at like 5 or 6 now. So even in the state of Florida. So talk about the progress of that. And what does that mean to me? I think it's cool, right? Like, I think that you don't know. I was at an event yesterday at the fire district because they honored the first black female firefighter. They honored the first black firefighter in St. Lucie County. They honored the longest serving black firefighter in St. Lucie County. And they honored the first black chief in St. Lucie County's history. And being in a room with those 4 people and thinking to myself, like, oh, I'm the first black clerk in St. Lucie County. They are so much cooler than I am because they're firefighters. But the other part of that is that it's nice because now, if there is a woman who is a black woman who wants to become a firefighter, she sees that someone else has done it. So it's not novel. So me becoming the second black clerk meant that I got to look at the clerk in Gaston, Clerk Thomas, and say, like, oh, okay, so blacks can be clerks, so I can run for clerk. It's nice to have a guidepost, and I think that's what it does. It gives you, so now I get to be a guidepost for someone else. So the next person who runs, if they're an African American and they become clerk, the cool thing about life and history and moving forward is they just get to be clerk. If I become president of the United States one day, which I don't know when I look at what's going on in the world, but if I become black president, I'm not black president, I'm just a president because they've already had the first. And I think that gives you that guidepost, like, oh, we've done that, so cool, let's move forward. And I think that's what we're trying to do as a country, is that we're trying to move forward. Thank you for the question. Yeah, sure. We're getting towards time. I'm sorry. I gotta get you guys off to your class. So, last question.
Before you became a clerk, what did you want to be?
I think I shared with you. So before I became clerk, I wanted to be president. I had every intention of like running for president. I was gonna go out and raise billions of dollars to run and go and do great things. But the president thing is not really the big point. The point is, when I first started, the reason I wanted to go and do that is I was on student council at Fairlawn, and we did this thing called Project Poinsettia, and we gave poinsettias to people who didn't have anything at Christmas, or we gave turkeys to people for Thanksgiving. And that was a little bit of money, and we did a lot of good with it. So I thought, oh my gosh, if I have a lot of money, how much more good can we do? And so that was my reason for thinking I was going to be president one day. But I think I found a pretty good niche, and I like where I am right now. So definitely, I don't have to be on the stage with Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or anybody else, so that works out as well for me too. All right? Well, everyone, I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today. Ms. Davis, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
You may be seated. Next, we will have a special recognition from our principal, Mr. Keith Davis.
I'd like to call Mr. Joseph Smith to come up. We have a plaque that we want to give to you. It says, "You Make the Difference," certificate, and present it to Joseph E. Smith in recognition of your outstanding achievements and dedicated efforts to the people of St. Lucie County. Samuel Gaines Academy 7th grade middle school would like to honor you during our Black History celebration for being an effective African-American male leader of our community. Based February 20th, 2020. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one more, if you don't mind.
Oh.
In the center, yeah, that's right.
Would you want to get all the pictures through? All your planners there?
Just a second.
Thank you.
I like to call this my Black History in Your Backyard. St. Lucie County is known for its cheery motto of the city of all ages. And it's a popular tourist destination. Having a mixed population, the city has a surging Black community with some deep historical roots. In the city of Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, author Zora Neale Hurston made her home here in the twilight of her career. The Eyes Are Watching God author worked several jobs while in the region, including teaching at Lincoln Park Academy and continuing working as a writer. Her home, the Zora Neale Hurston House, was named a U.S. National Historical Landmark. Golfing is one of Port St. Lucie's top attractions, and the city's PGA Center for Golf Learning and Performance in 2009, the PGA awarded 3 black golfing pioneers, Tay Rhodes, John Shippen, and Bill Spiller, with posthumous membership to the one-time Whites-Only Golfing Association. In 2010, Port St. Lucie PGA Center held an exhibit in Black History Month event, and in honor of the trio unveiled for the first time their contributions to the sport. Famed boxer Joe Louis was honored and was taught the game by Rhodes. Now, before I pass this next piece over to Ms. Bell, I like to talk about history makers. And if you notice, Mr. Smith touched upon that the whole time throughout. Currently, this 7th grade group have made history at Samuel Gaines Academy. Because of your support being here last year, we were able to make school history as a school letter grade of a B. So give yourselves a round of applause. Now, Mr. Smith also spoke and said, we have much work to continue to do. Let's continue to make that history, and you make your own backyard history. Thank you.
I tell you, I am so excited. I mean, I really enjoyed this. We had Mr. Barnes first, then we had Dr. Mills, and none other this time around, Clerk Joseph E. Smith. And let's give this whole Black History celebration a nice round of applause. And to keep the applause coming, I would like all of the teachers to come forward for 7th grade. All of the teachers, these are our teachers. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. We want to make sure that St. Lucie County see these beautiful teachers. Put your hands together, stand to your feet, and give a round of applause to our 7th grade teachers. Thank you. You may be seated. I also want to thank Miss Lawson, Miss Richner, Jeremy Daniels, Ashante. I would like to thank Jocelyn. Miss Martin, please. Miss Martin, she did a wonderful job standing in for us. We want to thank her. I just want to say that I thank you guys for being so wonderful. You guys are so beautiful, well behaved. This is how we got that B. You're still enough to learn. You're focused enough to learn. And I just want to say kudos and thank you. All right? This ends our Black History celebration for today.